I think we're live. Here we go is it Wednesday? I think it's
It's
Wednesday.
a Wednesday, yeah.
I have lost track of this week.
I have to track it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Today, we have Wendy Brookhouse on, and I'm very excited to talk to Wendy, both personally and professionally. But today, we're talking with her from a professional standpoint about what it took for her to take the hiring leap in her business. So, Wendy, why don't you introduce yourself and just let us know who it is that you support and what your business does?
Oh, excellent. Thank you for that, Laura. I am a financial planner, but I also consider myself a money coach, a strategist, all those pieces. And I work with smart, ambitious women and help them find, keep, and grow their wealth. And so those are some very big things that I love helping people do. And so that's my basic knowledge. I've been doing it for 16 years now, and using some unique proprietary things I've kind of invented along the way to help really make things simple for my clients.
Well, Wendy, I've heard you on podcasts before, so I know a little bit about the ambitious start you had as well, and a little bit about your money background in terms of your passion for it. What was the point in your business where you decided, hey, if I am not going to run myself into the ground, and if I needed to grow my business, I need to hire? When did that point come for you?
I would say probably 8 or 9 or more years ago now. So there's kind of this blend, Laura, where I worked by myself, and my husband and I tell this story because he ended up working with me because he goes, Wendy, you know this many people and you make this much money. How can that be? And so then he goes, so I was Johnny Tough Arms and said, I'll go do this for a year for her and help her grow. And what happened is he goes, at the end of it, he goes, I don't know how you made as much as you did because there's so much paperwork here. And so as we grew, we did realize that we needed to kind of get him out of the paperwork side and get someone else that could help on the administration side in particular. And it was so hard. I'm sure all your guests understand that chicken and egg. I know I can make more money if I hire someone, but I don't have enough money to hire the person. So how do I do all of this blend? And so what we actually did is we actually borrowed half a year's salary for somebody, put it in a bank account, and that's how we did it, so that we'd have that comfort level that we knew we could support them for 6 months.
Yep.
And that gave us that space to get the revenue going a little faster, so we could be sure we could pay her and then pay the loan back. That's how we approached it. Yeah.
And I think that, making sure that there's money in the bank to both feed another family as well as your own is a huge hurdle for a lot of people to overcome. And it's a really interesting way that you did that to make sure that you had the security and still the cash flow. Yeah. Because I think we all know if we can double ourselves, if we can double our time, the revenue is going to be there. I know when I was first hiring, I was not following up with the clients, and I was not following up with potential sales because I'm like, my capacity wasn't able to bring it on. So I knew that if I hired somebody, the capacity was there for them to do the work and bring in the revenue. But it's that initial step. What were the emotions that you had over that?
It's scary for sure, because you're making that leap, and you're making an assumption that, in my industry, the rule of thumb is whatever you spend on your assistant, you should be able to make 2 to 3 times that, right? In terms of revenue based on the work. So, but there's this lag time. There's this time where, they're helping, you're training them, and then you can start accelerating your sales process to bring more people in. But there is that lag. And that was my biggest concern and my biggest fear, was I didn't want to have that not funded, because I also felt very clear and very deeply that I did not want to take the responsibility of feeding someone else's family and not be able to follow through on that, especially if I'm bringing them in from somewhere else to do that. Like, so if they left something that was very secure and very good to come over, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to go in 3 months going, well, I guess that didn't work.
Right. Well, what do you think attracted that first hire, or the initial first hires, to your business? Because I think sometimes we think we are competing with the top talent, top businesses down the street, and we're single solopreneurs. What was the kind of the thing that attracted them?
I think it was the energy of us as a company, in the sense that we are very much about doing what's right, not what's easy. We're very much about long-term views, about balancing competitive priorities for our clients from today versus tomorrow. So these are the kinds of things I think attracted them, and just the work environment. We work super hard to walk the talk, because we talk about just get your work done as long as Wendy can do her work, da 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 da. But then sometimes that old menacing, 1950s voice comes out of your head and going, but they left at 4:30 today. You know what I mean? And you pay them till 5 versus, that they worked a little bit on the weekend. So that's that balancing
Yeah.
act. You have to shut some stuff off in your head and make sure that you're saying, if you get this done, you can go do stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have that give and take. And so that was where we really pushed ourselves through some real mind blocks. I think back to way back in the day, I was being recruited by one of the banks, and after my interview with them, I felt like, wow, so I can work whenever I want as long as it's 9 to 5. Excellent. So it's important to us to walk the talk and not just say we're about a results-driven business.
Yeah.
But that we manage, we operate to that as well. So we do not micromanage. We do not. We have systems to track what we're doing and make sure everything's on where it needs to be. But by no means are we looking over anyone's shoulder on the day-to-day basis. And I think that's going to attract a certain set of people. If someone needs to be micromanaged, if they're not about all hands on deck from time to time, then they're not fitting here. And so it's really important for us that we have that whole collaborative approach, and that we are very much about here's what we think the priorities are for the next 3 months. What do you guys think? And having that collaborativeness, I think, makes a difference, and recognizes the talents these people are bringing to the table, so that they're not just doing what I tell them.
Yeah,
I'm a very good delegator.
I hear you on that. So what do you think has changed in your hiring practice, or has anything changed in your hiring practice throughout the years as you've grown and as you've had new people come on board?
Well, I think you'll like this story, Laura. So we had a process where we would gather resumes, we would shortlist, we would interview. On the shortlist, we'd probably Colby them from an assessment perspective. And then when we got to the final person, then we did a profile PXT, which told us their thinking style, their introvert, extrovert, their independence, all these pieces. And so we were following that process, and we had one person come in, and then we had to let them go find better work for themselves. And we had to go through the second process, and we're like asking all these questions because we're like, we're not letting that happen again. And then what happened? We did that PXT, and the guy who helps us with that goes, oh, this is pretty much the same profile as that last person. And we're like, oh my goodness. And what we found was, number one, if someone was outgoing and extroverted and also were very quick thinking, we couldn't ask the question that would get to what we needed. They were always telling us what we wanted to hear. Right. And so that just, whew. So we changed everything as a result of that. And what we started doing is using this thing called Talent Sorter. It's a guy in Halifax that did this. And what we can do is go through and answer a whole bunch of questions, and it kind of tells us how the person needs to be. Are they outgoing? Yeah. Can they manage themselves? All that kind of stuff, right? And then what we can do is when we post a job, we put a link to that questionnaire, and it will allow us to get the answers to these key things that it's either it's red, green, or yellow. Yeah. And then what we were able to do is say, okay, if they didn't score over 80, we're not even looking at it. And if they scored over 80, now we can go dig down. Oh, the green ones don't match with my priorities, so I probably should let this one go. But if the greens matched, and even if there was a bunch of reds, we didn't care because the big things were there. Yeah. And we could work from that. So that helped us a lot, although I probably didn't use it on my last hire. My last hire, she came in through a program just to ask me about finance, and next thing you know, I'm like, yeah, I think you could be really good at this, so let's bring you in. Well, I wasn't looking, so it just happened. Yeah.
I love a good gut check. And I love your what I feel like you just said is we hire, we ask the right questions, and then we make sure that the analytical side matches up to that initial gut check. Yeah. But if you only had one or the other,
Yeah.
you run into problems. If you only have the analytics and
Yeah.
those quantitative,
Yeah.
you don't get the full picture of that, internal, like this is the right person, this is the right fit. And I've run into problems where I have that great gut check.
Yep.
And I forget about the analytical side and can they actually do the job, because they're just a fantastic person.
Right.
But they weren't right for us because they actually couldn't do the job. We could go for a glass of wine, no problem.
Absolutely. 4 levels of fit have to be present for a good relationship. One, with the job, they have to fit the job. They have to fit with their manager. They have to fit with the team, and they have to fit with the company. Right. Yeah. So if you're missing one of those, you have people who are unhappy, or you're the one that's unhappy. And you don't want to be unhappy.
And I think knowing your own management style before you hire is really important, which is tough if you've never actually managed before. Yeah. But knowing if you're going to be a micromanager, which I mean, micromanagers get such a bad rap, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because there is a good portion of the population who likes to have detailed information in order to do or accomplish something.
Yeah, and knowing, if you know that, if you know they need a great deal of information to make a decision, or that they're slower on follow through, you can help build the systems to make sure that they're okay on that. And I think your point is so bang on. Like, I remember I moderated a leadership panel one time, and we had a guy who was probably the micromanager dude, and he wanted to be on top of everything. And then we had another dude who's like, I meditate, and I just, we interview, everybody talks to everybody before we make a decision. So they both ran exceptionally successful companies. And it's because they hired teams that worked like they did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the example I keep in my mind, is like, you could be freaking awesome, but you may not be a fit. Just because you can do the job and we like you doesn't mean you're going to fit with everything else we're doing. And it's a tough place to get to.
Yeah. And it takes time. And I think that's, as you're talking, I love what you're doing. It sounds so fantastic. And I'm thinking back to that solopreneur who's about to take the hiring leap. And what would you tell that individual, knowing what you know now, a decade later?
You were going to come up with a hard question for sure, Laura. Thank you. What would I tell me? I would tell me it's better to make sure of the fit than to go too fast, right? It's that whole maxim you hear, but you'd never pay attention to until you're in the situation, which was hire slow, fire fast. And also, I believe that the other thing is you have to get ready. You may have to have difficult conversations with people, and that's
you'll have to have difficult conversations.
Yeah. So, getting some training in that, or just even watching, whatever, just to get some comfort level with that, because at the end of the day, no one's going to care about your company or clients as much as you. And because this is your business, so you have to find people who can care and be technically apt. And that is a super hard combo. And so you got to keep that in mind. There's the caring, the brightness in the eye, and then there's the technical expertise. And also deciding, do you want to train them from the ground up? Or do you want someone that already that has enough that you can just let them loose right from the get-go? And, I've built, right now my 2 people who work with on my team, we built them from the ground up. But my next one's not, I know that next time I don't have the energy right now to do that for my next hire. So my next hire will come, 50% already trained.
And there's a case for both.
Right.
Like it's not a one size fits all. And I appreciate so much of what you're saying. I feel like we could go further into, all of these topics, but I want to keep it short. And I certainly appreciate your time and sharing your story about taking the hiring lead.
Hopefully it helps somebody.
Yeah, it always does, because the things that we deal with when we're initially taking that first hire, which I believe is the hardest one, is the first one. I guess it's kind of like having kids. The first one is the hardest one, and then, roll them along after that. But
they baits and switches you all the time. That's what I feel.
So that first one is so hard, and there's such an emotional journey to it. And I think people think that if they're the only ones who have gone through that emotional journey,
And pull off the need to be perfect. Come on, just go.
Yeah.
You'll learn as you go. And
I'm
there
sorry,
we
I
go.
think I froze. Where can people find you, Wendy, if they want to know
Oh,
more about what you do?
blackstarwealth.com is my website. And if they'd love to have a conversation with me, I have this bookwithwendy.com, and you can actually book a half-hour conversation with me. We can get to know each other and see if there's a fit, because clients need to fit as well, and also if I can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.